Welcome to the deep dive. Wow, you've really given us a lot to dig into this time. Project management, huh? PMBOK guide. Agile articles, case studies, you're not messing around.
Looks like someone's getting ready to tackle a big project, am I right?
You know, it's funny you say that because, yeah, there's definitely a project brewing. And going through all this, honestly, one thing really jumped out at me. This whole idea of crashing a project. Have you ever actually done that?
Crashing. Oh, yeah. They can be a lifesaver when you need it, but it's not for the faint of heart. You got to be really careful with the budget, and of course, the quality takes a hit. And don't even get me started on the risks you're adding.
Right. Like, it sounds kind of intense. So before we even think about speeding things up, let's take a step back. What's this PMBOK guide all about?
Think of it like the project manager's Bible, you know? It's the gold standard, globally recognized, gives everyone a common language, a framework to work from, keeps everyone on the same page from the team all the way up to the stakeholders.
So is it just a big dictionary of project terms then?
Oh, it's way more than that. It's best practices, it's processes, and most importantly, it lays out these 12 principles, like the core of what makes a project successful.
Okay, 12 principles, huh? I'm curious, can you give me an example of one that you really find valuable?
Focus on value. That's a big one. It's so easy to just get lost in the weeds, you know, checking off tasks. But this principle, it reminds us that everything we do should be delivering actual value to the stakeholders.
That's a good point. I mean, it's easy to lose sight of the big picture when you're in the thick of it.
Absolutely. And tailor based on context, that's another one. Every project is different. You can't just use a cookie cutter approach. You got to be flexible and adapt to what the situation demands.
So like be a tailor, right? Craft a custom solution for each project.
Exactly. And speaking of tailoring, let's talk about scope management.
Scope management. Isn't that just figuring out what needs to be done? Sounds pretty basic.
It's one of the most important things, actually, and one of the most misunderstood. Think of it like the foundation of a house. If the scope is shaky, the whole project can come crashing down.
Okay, now you've got my attention.
Yeah.
How do we build that solid foundation then?
First things first, gotta understand what your stakeholders really need and expect. That's where your scope statement comes in, what's out, all the details.
So setting clear boundaries right from the get-go.
You got it. And this is where we often run into, well, a bit of a monster, scope creep.
Scope creep. Uh-oh, that sounds ominous.
It can be. It's when those project requirements just keep growing and changing, you know, out of control. And nobody's really looking at the impact on the time, the budget, the resources, like starting to build a little house and suddenly everyone decides they want a skyscraper. But nobody bothered to reinforce the foundation.
Yikes, that sounds like a recipe for disaster. So how do you stop that from happening?
Rigorous scope management, my friend. You got to have a clear process for handling changes. Someone wants to change something, fine. But we're going to assess how that impacts the time, the cost, the quality, the triple constraints.
Makes sense. So any changes have got to be like aligned with the big picture goals.
Exactly. And once you've got that well-defined scope, you can break it down into, you know, more manageable chunks. That's where we use this thing called the work breakdown structure, WBS.
Yeah, I've heard of that. It's like a giant to-do list for the whole project.
It's a bit more than a to-do list. It's a visual thing, a hierarchical diagram of the entire scope. It breaks everything down, deliverables into smaller work packages, like the building blocks of your project.
Okay, so it's a way to visualize the entire project, break it into bite-sized pieces. But why is that so important?
Clarity, structure. Helps you figure out who's doing what, how long it'll take, how to track progress. It's like a detailed roadmap that keeps everyone on the project team heading in the right direction.
That's a great way to put it. But okay, what about when things go wrong? Because they always do, right? How do we handle those unexpected bumps in the road?
That's where risk management comes in. It's about looking ahead, seeing those potential problems, and having a plan to deal with them. Like an insurance policy for your project.
Okay, so be prepared. I get that.
Yeah.
But how do you even know what to be prepared for?
Start by identifying the risks. Brainstorming, looking at what happened in similar projects, talking to people who might have insights. You want to cast a wide net here.
Catch all those potential problems before they become real problems.
Exactly. But we don't just identify them and hope for the best, right? You got to analyze them. How bad could this be, and how likely is it to actually happen?
So some risks are bigger deals than others.
Absolutely. We categorize them based on their severity, and then we make a plan. Mitigate it, avoid it completely, transfer it to someone else, or sometimes, if it's not a big deal, we just accept it.
Is this where that crashing thing comes in? Like to mitigate a schedule risk?
It could, yeah. But remember, crashing has its own set of risks. You could blow the budget, end up with shoddy work, or even create whole new problems you didn't see coming. It's like taking a shortcut through a dark alley. Might get you there faster, but you might also get mugged.
So it was all about weighing the good and the bad. There's no easy answers, huh?
Nope. Risk management, it's about making smart decisions, having all the information, and it's not a one-and-done thing. Got to keep an eye on those risks throughout the whole project, because things change fast.
And speaking of things changing fast, our listener also sent some stuff about agile methodologies. How's that different from, traditional project management?
Traditional, like waterfall, it's very linear, step by step, very rigid. Think building a house, foundation, walls, roof, each thing in order. But, the world's a lot more chaotic than that.
So agile is about adapting as you go.
Exactly. It's all about iterations. You work in short cycles, sprints, we call them. Deliver a little bit, get feedback, adjust, more like building with Legos, adding a brick, then another, and changing the design as you go.
I like that. So flexibility and responding to change are key in agile. What are some of the big ideas in agile we should know?
Scrum, Kanban, those are the big ones. They're frameworks within agile, Give you some structure, some guidelines. Scrum's like a playbook for how to run a sprint. Kanban is visual, like a board, to manage the workflow.
Okay, so Scrum's the structured one, Kanban's the visual one. Got it.
Yeah. And then you have user stories and the product backlog, which is just a fancy way of saying, what are we building and in what order?
User stories, those are like from the perspective of someone actually using the thing, right?
Bingo. Helps us stay focused on building the right thing, meeting the real needs. And the product backlog, that's a living document, always changing, always getting reprioritized as we learn more.
So it evolves along with the project.
You got it. And while Agile has a lot of advantages, like you're more flexible, you deliver faster, it's not a cure-all. Sometimes it's not the best fit, and it really requires a change in mindset in the whole culture.
So how do you know if Agile is the right way to go?
Depends. How complex is the project? How clear are the requirements? How much uncertainty is there? If things are going to be changing rapidly, you need to be able to adapt quickly, then Agile might be your best bet.
Right, like using the right tool for the job. But no matter what approach you take, communication seems like it's always key.
You know it. Communication is everything in a project. It's how you build those relationships, manage expectations, handle conflicts, and in the end, deliver a successful outcome.
So what's good communication look like in this context?
Well, first you got to understand your audience. Who are you talking to? What information do they need? How do they like to get that information? Executives, they want the big picture. Team members, they need the nitty-gritty details.
Tailoring the message, right?
Exactly. And don't just talk at people. We got to have that back and forth. Encourage feedback. Get their input. Make them feel like they're part of the process, not just being told what to do.
Build that trust and collaboration.
You got it. And remember, you can't just communicate once and call it a day. It's an ongoing thing all throughout the project.
Okay, communication is crucial. I'm with you there. But even with the best communication, conflicts are going to pop up. That's just how it goes. How do we deal with those?
It's not about avoiding conflict. It's about managing it. Keep it constructive. Really listen to each other. Have those open conversations. Find a solution that works for everyone.
So turn that conflict into something positive, something collaborative.
Exactly. And sometimes, conflict means people care, they're passionate about the project. It's about channeling that energy in the right direction.
Okay, communication, conflict, that's all about like the human side of things. What other skills are important for a good project leader?
Empower your team. That's huge. It's not about telling people what to do every step of the way. It's about creating an environment where they feel valued, trusted, motivated to do their best.
More like guiding and supporting, less like micromanaging.
You got it. And this kind of leadership, we call it servant leadership, works really well with Agile, where teams are more self-organizing, they need that autonomy.
Servant leadership, that's an interesting concept. Leading by serving.
Yeah, it's about putting the team first, removing obstacles, providing resources, building a culture of, working together and always getting better.
That's powerful stuff. So I think we've covered a lot here. Scope management, risk management, agile, communication, leadership. It's clear that project management is like a whole world unto itself.
It is, and it's always changing. What worked yesterday might not work tomorrow.
So stay curious, stay adaptable.
Absolutely, and that's what keeps it interesting. Never a dull moment, always something new to learn.
Well, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, is there anything else our listeners should keep in mind?
Yeah, one thing. Project management, it's not about blindly following some process, just checking boxes. It's about bringing ideas to life, solving problems, creating something of value.
It's that human element, that creative spark, right?
Yeah.
The collaboration, the passion. That's what makes a project truly succeed.
Exactly. And that's what makes it all worthwhile.
You know, it's interesting, all this talk about the human side of projects, the passion, the collaboration. It makes me think about what happens when a project ends. Do we just like pack up and move on to the next thing?
Not so fast. That's where lessons learned come in. So important and often overlooked, like debriefing after a mission.
So it's not about dwelling on mistakes. It's about figuring out what worked well, what could be better next time.
Exactly. It's all about extracting those golden nuggets from the experience, good and bad. We document those lessons so we, hopefully don't repeat the same mistakes again.
Building a knowledge base, like a library of project wisdom. Love it. What's the best way to go about capturing these lessons learned, though?
Simple is best, honestly. Just have a dedicated session at the end of the project. Get the team together, encourage everyone to be honest, and document everything. Make it a shared thing.
So like a group brainstorm, everyone gets to share their perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not enough to just write it down. You got to make it accessible, you know? Share it with other teams, integrate it into your processes, use it to actually get better.
Create a culture of like constantly learning and improving.
That's the goal. And speaking of organizational learning, remember we talked about that organizational project management, OPM.
Yeah. That's about like aligning projects with the big picture goals of the organization.
Right. And OPM, it gives you the structure, the support to make those lessons learned part of the DNA of the organization. So they actually get used, they inform future decisions.
It's not a one-time thing. It's like an ongoing process.
Exactly. And this is where leadership really matters. Leaders have to, champion this culture of learning, be transparent, and make sure those lessons don't just get filed away and forgotten.
Right. Leaders set the tone, create that environment for continuous improvement. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about stakeholders.
Stakeholders, the people who have a stake in the outcome of the project. They can be your best friends, or they can make your life a living hell. Depends on how well you manage those relationships.
So it's more than just keeping them in the loop. It's actively engaging them throughout the whole thing.
Absolutely. And it starts with knowing who they are. Sounds obvious, but you wouldn't believe how often projects miss key stakeholders. It's not just the sponsor and the team, it's regulators, community groups, anyone who might be affected by the project or who can affect the project.
Cast a wide net. Make sure you're not missing anyone who matters.
Exactly. And once you know who they are, you got to figure out, okay, how interested are they? How much influence do they have? Not all stakeholders are created equal. Some need more attention. Some need to be, carefully managed.
Like some need more hand-holding than others.
Yeah, something like that. Think of it like a garden. Some plants, they need more sun, more water. Some stakeholders, they need more communication, more involvement. You got to tailor your approach.
That's a good analogy. So how do we actually engage them effectively? What are some practical tips?
Communication is key, of course, but it's not just about blasting out updates. It's about knowing what each stakeholder needs, how they like to get information. Some want detailed reports. Some just need a quick phone call. You got to speak their language.
So understand their communication style, adapt your approach.
Yeah. And it's got to be a two-way street. Don't just talk at them, get their feedback, ask for their input, make them feel like they're part of the decision-making process.
Right. Build that trust, that collaboration.
Exactly. And again, it's not a one-time thing. Stakeholder engagement, it's an ongoing process from the beginning of the project all the way to the end.
Okay. I think we've got a good handle on stakeholders. Now, what about money? The financial side of things. How do we keep a project on track financially?
Cost management. Another critical piece of the puzzle. And like most things, it starts with planning.
Planning. So it's more than just keeping track of the receipts as you go.
Way more than that. You need a solid cost management plan. How are you going to estimate the costs? How are you going to budget for them? And how are you going to control those costs throughout the whole project?
Okay, so like a roadmap for financial success.
Yeah.
But how do you even begin to estimate costs for a project? There's so many things that can go wrong.
Cost estimation, it's a bit of an art, a bit of a science. You look at historical data from similar projects, you break the project down into smaller pieces, you talk to experts.
So experience, analysis, expert opinions, it all comes into play.
Yep. And in Agile projects, we often use this technique called planning poker. It's kind of a fun way to get everyone on the team involved in estimating how much effort each task will take.
Planning poker, that sounds intriguing. How does that work?
Basically, each team member gets a set of cards with different numbers on them, representing different levels of effort. We talk about the task, then everyone shows their card at the same time. If the estimates are close, great. If they're way off, that sparks a discussion about why, which helps us refine our understanding and come up with a more accurate estimate.
I love that, turning estimation into a game. It sounds a lot more engaging than just plugging numbers into a spreadsheet.
It is, and it often leads to more accurate estimates because everyone's contributing their knowledge and perspective.
Okay, so once we've got those estimates, what's next?
We build the budget, a detailed plan that outlines how much money will be spent in each phase of the project. It's our financial roadmap, our guide, and it helps us track our progress.
Our financial compass, keeping us on course.
Exactly. But it's not a static thing. It's got to be a living document. You constantly got to monitor it, adjust it as the project evolves, see how your actual spending compares to the budget, look for any red flags.
So it's an ongoing process, like everything else in project management.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
this is where communication with the team is so important. You got to understand why there are variances. Is it something unexpected? Did the scope change? Or are we just not being efficient?
It's about understanding the why behind the numbers, not just the numbers themselves.
Exactly. And that brings us to the next piece, controlling costs.
So it's not enough to just track expenses and compare them to the budget. We actually need to manage those costs actively.
Absolutely. You got to be proactive, preventing overspending, finding ways to cut costs, negotiating with vendors to get the best deals.
Being fiscally responsible throughout the entire project.
Exactly. And that takes discipline, attention to detail, and, good communication skills.
Okay, so cost management is all about planning, budgeting, monitoring, controlling. But it's not just about saving money, is it? We also need to think about the return on investment.
Great point. It's not just about spending less, it's about getting the most bang for your buck, making sure that the project is actually beneficial to the organization.
So how do we measure that? How do we prove that the project is worth the investment?
That's where benefits management comes in. What are the benefits we expect to see from this project? How are we going to measure those benefits? And how are we going to track our progress in realizing those benefits?
So it's about making sure the project actually adds value to the organization, not just delivering something on time and on budget.
Exactly. And it involves developing a clear understanding of what those benefits are, defining metrics to track them, and setting up processes to monitor and report on how those benefits are being realized.
Like building a business case for the project, showing how it aligns with the organization's strategic goals.
Exactly. By effectively managing both costs and benefits, we ensure that the project is not only financially responsible, but also delivers tangible value.
Wow, we've covered a lot here. Cost management, benefits management, stakeholder management, risk management. It's clear that project management is a multifaceted beast, requiring a diverse set of skills and knowledge.
It is, and it's a field that's constantly evolving, with new technologies, methodologies, and challenges emerging all the time. But at its core, project management is about people. Leading teams, building relationships, communicating effectively, and inspiring others to achieve extraordinary results.
It's not just about managing tasks and timelines. It's about managing people and fostering a culture of collaboration and success. And speaking of people, let's dive into the crucial aspect of team management.
Yes. The team, the heart and soul of any project.
Without a strong, motivated team, even the best laid plans can fall apart. So how do we build and manage high-performing project teams?
It all starts with assembling the right team.
Okay, that seems obvious enough. But how do we know who the right people are? What are we looking for?
You got to carefully consider the skills, the experience, even the personalities needed to get the job done. It's like putting together a puzzle. Each piece has to fit just right.
Finding that perfect mix of talents and temperaments.
Exactly. And it's not just about technical skills, it's those soft skills too. The communication, the collaboration, the problem solving. You got to have those in spades.
Right. The things that allow people to work together effectively.
You got it. And once you have the right people, you got to create an environment where they can thrive. A culture of trust, respect, open communication.
So it's more than just, assigning tasks and setting deadlines. It's about making people feel valued, heard, empowered to contribute their best work.
Absolutely. You got to provide clear directions, set expectations, but then give them the autonomy and support they need to actually get the job done.
Empowerment. What does that look like in the real world?
It means delegating responsibility, letting go of some control, and encouraging people to make decisions, contribute their unique skills and ideas. It's about trusting them to do their jobs and giving them the freedom to be creative and solve problems.
So you're creating an environment where they feel confident, taking initiative, making decisions without constantly checking in with you.
Exactly. And that leads to more motivation, more creativity, more job satisfaction. Everyone wins.
It makes sense. When you feel trusted and empowered, you're more likely to, go the extra mile. But even with the best teams, conflicts are bound to happen. How do we handle those gracefully?
Conflict is natural, especially when you've got a bunch of passionate people working towards a common goal. The key is to address it constructively. Encourage open dialogue, listen to each other, and find solutions that work for everyone involved.
So you're turning conflict into an opportunity to grow, to improve.
Precisely. And remember, sometimes conflict means people care. They're invested in the project and its success. It's about harnessing that energy and directing it in a positive way.
Okay, we've talked about building the right team, creating a positive and empowering environment, and managing those inevitable conflicts. What else is important for effective team management?
Celebrating successes. Don't forget to take the time to recognize and appreciate the hard work and achievements of your team.
Ah, yes. Celebrating milestones, acknowledging accomplishments. Why is that so important?
It boosts morale, strengthens those team bonds, creates a sense of shared accomplishment, and it reinforces positive behaviors, motivates people to keep striving for excellence.
It's like a positive feedback loop. Success breeds more success.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that projects are not just about checking off tasks, it's about the people, the collaboration, the shared success.
That's a great point. So we've covered a lot about managing the team internally. But what about when we need to bring in outside help? External resources or expertise.
That's where procurement management comes in. It's the process of acquiring goods, services, or results from outside the project team. Think of it like going shopping for your project, but on a much bigger, more complex scale.
So it's about getting what we need from vendors, suppliers, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And it's a critical part of many projects, especially those that require specialized skills or resources that you just don't have in-house.
Okay, I can see how that would be important. But what does procurement management actually involve? It sounds kind of complicated.
It can be, but like everything else, it starts with a plan.
A plan. So we're not just picking up the phone and calling the first vendor we find.
It's a lot more strategic than that. You have to figure out what needs to be procured, what's the best strategy for procuring it, and what documentation do we need to have in place.
So what we need, how we're going to get it, and the paperwork involved.
I got it.
Got it. What kinds of things affect the procurement strategy?
Lots of things. The complexity of what you're buying, the availability of vendors, your risk tolerance, even your organization's internal policies.
So tailoring the approach to the specific situation makes sense. What happens after the planning stage?
Then you conduct the procurements. You solicit bids or proposals from different vendors, evaluate their responses, and choose the best one for the job.
So it's like a competition. The vendors are vying for our business.
Exactly. And it's not just about getting the lowest price. You got to look at their experience, their reputation, their ability to meet your quality standards, and how well they understand your project needs.
Right. It's about finding the right partner, not just the cheapest option. Okay, so we've chosen a vendor. What's next?
You sign a contract, of course, outlining all the terms and conditions, and then you move into the management phase of the procurement.
Managing the procurement. What does that entail?
Basically, you're keeping an eye on the vendor's performance, making sure they're meeting their contractual obligations, handling any issues that pop up, and managing any changes to the scope of the procurement.
So making sure the vendor delivers on their promises and keeps everything on track. What skills do you need to be good at this?
Communication and negotiation skills are key. You got to be able to articulate your requirements clearly, evaluate those vendor proposals, negotiate favorable terms, and build a good relationship with the vendor.
Sounds like procurement management is another area where a skilled project manager can really shine.
Absolutely. Doing it well can save the organization time and money, reduce risks, and ensure that the project has the resources it needs to succeed.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground here in terms of the different principles, methodologies, and processes involved in project management. But how do we bring it all together? What's the secret to making sure it all works?
The secret ingredient, you might say, is integration.
Integration. What does that mean in a project management context?
It's about coordinating all the different elements of a project into a cohesive whole. making sure all those moving parts work together smoothly to achieve the project objectives.
So it's more than just managing those individual processes. It's about connecting the dots, making sure everything is aligned.
Exactly. And that requires a big picture perspective. You got to understand the project goals, the constraints, the stakeholders, how everything fits together.
It's like being the conductor of an orchestra, making sure all the instruments are in harmony.
Perfect analogy. And integration isn't a one-time thing either. It's an ongoing process throughout the entire project lifecycle. You're constantly monitoring, adjusting, adapting as things change.
So being flexible and responsive is key.
You got it. And it also means remembering that project management is a team sport.
Ah, yes, the human element again.
Exactly. To integrate effectively, you need strong communication, collaboration, and a shared understanding of the project goals among all the team members and stakeholders. Everyone needs to feel like they're part of it, like they have a stake in the outcome.
So you're creating a culture of transparency, open communication.
Exactly. And you can facilitate that through regular team meetings, status reports, online collaboration tools, even just informal check-ins. Make sure information is flowing freely and everyone feels connected to the project's progress.
Integration, communication, collaboration, it seems like those are the threads that weave everything together, that create the conditions for project success.
Couldn't have said it better myself. By effectively integrating all aspects of the project managers increase the likelihood of delivering the right product on time, within budget, and to the satisfaction of stakeholders.
Well, as we're talking about integration, bringing all these elements together, it strikes me that there's one crucial aspect we haven't explicitly addressed yet. Quality.
Ah, yes. Quality, the foundation of any truly successful project. We've talked about it in relation to other areas like scope management and procurement, but it's important to emphasize that quality management is a discipline in its own right.
So it's not just about inspecting the final product and making sure it meets the specs. It's about building quality into every step of the process.
Exactly. Quality management starts at the very beginning, during the planning stage. You define the quality standards, the processes, the metrics that you'll use to make sure the project deliverables meet the stakeholders' expectations.
So you're setting the bar high from the start and making sure everyone knows what good looks like.
Precisely. And that involves understanding what the stakeholders want, what the industry standards are, and what the acceptance criteria for the deliverables will be.
Okay, so setting clear expectations, defining what good means in this context, what comes after planning.
Then you move into managing quality. This is where you put those plans into action. You monitor and control the quality of the work being done, and you take corrective action whenever necessary to make sure you stay on track and meet those quality standards.
So it's about keeping the project on track, quality-wise, and fixing any problems that arise.
Exactly. That might mean regular quality audits, inspections, testing deliverables against those acceptance criteria, and using various quality control tools and techniques to identify and address potential issues.
I'm curious about those tools and techniques. What are some examples?
Oh, there are tons of them. But some of the most common and effective ones are flowcharts, Pareto charts, cause and effect diagrams, control charts, histograms. They help you visualize data, see patterns, and figure out the root causes of problems.
Sounds pretty technical. Can you give me an example of how you'd actually use one of those tools in a project?
Sure. Imagine you're working on a software development project, and you're seeing a lot of defects. You could use a Pareto chart to analyze those defects, see which types are happening most often. Then you can focus your efforts on fixing the biggest problems first.
Okay, so prioritize, focus on what matters most. But what about the human side of quality management? It's not just about processes and tools, right?
You're absolutely right. Quality management is about people, too. You have to create a culture of quality within the team.
Right. The team, the stakeholders, the individuals, they're the ones who ultimately determine the quality of the project.
Exactly. And building that culture means empowering team members, giving them the training and resources they need, encouraging them to take pride in their work, and creating an environment where they feel comfortable speaking up if they see something that needs to be improved.
So make quality everyone's responsibility.
Exactly. When you integrate quality management into every facet of the project, from planning and execution to monitoring and control, you're setting yourself up for success. You'll deliver high-quality results that meet or exceed stakeholder expectations and contribute to the organization's overall success.
Quality management, stakeholder management, risk management, integration. It's fascinating how all these pieces work together, influencing each other, shaping the trajectory of a project.
It really is. Project management is a dynamic dance, and it's that skillful coordination, that blending of these elements that separates the successful projects from the ones that stumble.
And as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave our listener with one final thought before we move on to the last part.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Remember, project management is not just a set of processes, a checklist. It's a way of thinking, a mindset, a commitment to excellence in every aspect of the project.
It's about embracing challenges, striving for continuous improvement, and inspiring others to achieve truly amazing results. It's about turning visions into reality and making a positive impact on the world through the power of project management.
It really is amazing to see how all these pieces fit together, from scope and risk to communication and quality. It's like a well-oiled machine, each part is so important.
It is, but it's a machine powered by people. Their skills, their knowledge, their creativity, their passion. That's what really makes it go.
You're so right. It's easy to get lost in the technical stuff, the processes, the tools, but in the end, it all comes back to the human element.
Absolutely. And that's why leadership is so crucial. A good leader can inspire a team, motivate them, help them reach their full potential.
We've talked about different styles, like that servant leadership, which seems like a good fit for Agile. But for our listener, what are some concrete things a project leader can do to create that positive, productive environment?
It all starts with trust, building that rapport with your team, open communication, really listening to people, showing that you genuinely care.
Create that safe space where people feel comfortable sharing their ideas, their concerns, just being themselves.
Exactly. And of course, clear expectations, regular feedback, recognizing and rewarding good work.
The fundamentals of good leadership, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
But what about when things get tough? Deadlines are looming, the pressure's on, maybe the team is starting to stress out. How can a leader help them through that?
You stay calm, stay focused, and you support your team. Help them break those big problems down into smaller pieces, offer encouragement, and show them a clear way forward.
So be that steady presence, that voice of reason when things get chaotic.
Yeah, exactly. And know when to ask for help. No leader can do it all alone. Sometimes you need to bring in extra resources, get advice from experts, delegate tasks.
Right. Know your limits, leverage the strengths of your team, your organization. But even with the best leadership, a great team, projects still run into trouble.
Of course. And that's where risk management and change management come in. You got to be prepared.
We talk about risk management, anticipating problems. But how does change management fit in?
It's about handling the changes that inevitably happen during a project. The scope might change, the schedule, the budget, the resources, even the stakeholders themselves.
So being ready for anything, having a system in place to deal with those changes smoothly and efficiently.
Exactly. Communicate those changes clearly to everyone involved, figure out the impact, update the plan, and make sure everyone's on board with the new direction.
Keep everyone informed, minimize those disruptions, and keep moving towards the goal.
Exactly. And remember, change is going to happen. Embrace it, adapt to it, learn from it.
It's not the enemy, it's part of the process.
Right. And that leads us to continuous improvement.
We talked about that in terms of capturing those lessons learned, right?
Yeah.
Using those to get better. But how do you create that culture of continuous improvement, all throughout the project?
Make it okay for people to speak up, to point out problems, suggest solutions, try new things. Encourage that open communication, collaboration, that willingness to learn from mistakes.
Create that environment where people feel safe sharing their ideas, even if they're not perfect.
Exactly. And have systems in place to collect feedback, analyze data, make improvements, team retrospectives, customer surveys, performance dashboards. Those are all good tools.
So data and feedback driving that continuous improvement.
You got it. And it's not a one-time thing, it's a journey. You're always learning, adapting, evolving.
A journey that takes strong leadership, a shared vision, and everyone on board committed to excellence.
Absolutely. Looking back at everything we've talked about, it's clear that project management, it's more than just a set of rules or a to-do list. It's a way of thinking, a way of approaching work, a commitment to delivering real value.
It's about turning ideas into reality, solving those tough problems, making a positive impact.
Exactly. And that's what makes it all so rewarding. You get to make a difference, build something meaningful.
That's a great note to end on. I want to thank you for sharing your insights, your expertise. This has been a fantastic deep dive into project management.
It's been my pleasure. I hope our listener feels equipped to tackle their project, big or small, with confidence and enthusiasm.
Absolutely. And remember, listener, you're now armed with all this project management knowledge. Go out there and make those projects a success.
And never stop learning. Keep growing. Share what you've learned with others. The world needs more passionate, skilled project managers.
Couldn't agree more. Happy projecting, everyone.